I just dropped $600 at a gun show, but was it a ripoff? What's up guys, Readiness Reviews here with you again, and it is once more time for one of our quarterly military surplus market updates, and we'll talk about what I picked up at today's gun show. Before we get into it, don't forget to hit the thumbs up if you like seeing this Milsurp content here on YouTube, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of my future firearms content. So today was gun show day, the very last gun show of 2024. Given how busy shows have been in my area for the past little while, I was extremely surprised by how few people were at the show today. We're right here at Christmas, but there seemed to be no urgency from a firearm standpoint, and that's a huge change from how things were as recently as 3 months ago. I was delighted to see that today's show was absolutely overflowing with military surplus firearms. There were more individual military rifles and pistols at this show than there were probably the last 2 or 3 shows combined. But although there was a plethora of Milsurp options, prices on the other hand were absolutely crazy, maybe the worst I've ever seen. There were a buttload of SKS pattern rifles at this show, the majority of which were Chinese, but there were Yugoslavian and Russian variants in the mix. The cost for said Chinese SKSs was absolutely shocking though. From what I witnessed, the average going rate was like $800. Typically, I consider a Chinese SKS about a $600 gun in today's market, but I guess the vendors at this show didn't get the memo because I didn't see a single Chinese SKS for that kind of money. Aside from those SKSs, I was really excited to stumble upon the first Egyptian Hakim rifle that I've seen in person in a good long while. However, that Hakim came with a hefty price tag of $1,200, which is not completely out of the ballpark, but certainly on the high side of what I think a Hakim should be going for. There were tons of Mosin Nagants, both rifles and carbines, but the average going rate for even something as simple as a basic Arsenal refurbished M9130 was about $600, and about the same for your average condition M44 or M38 carbine. Of course, the more desirable Mosins, like finished variants, were more like $800, which I think is certainly on the high end and really higher than market value. There were all manner of Mausers from all over the globe, a surprising amount of Lee Enfields, number 1s, number 4s, and I even saw a jungle carbine. But as I alluded to before, just because there were tons of Milsurps available doesn't really mean that any of them were affordable, and I truly believe that most of the items I encountered today were marked unreasonably high. Prices were so high, in fact, that I found it a little bit discouraging. We had scoured almost the entire show, and it looked like I was going to go home empty-handed until we stumbled across the very last Milsurp table, and I spotted this beauty. I was instantly interested when I saw that $600 price tag, but of course, me being me, I attempted to negotiate a little bit better price, but they absolutely wouldn't budge one bit, which is understandable for such a beautiful looking rifle. I asked them to untie it so I could have a look at the bore, and as soon as I looked down the barrel, I knew instantly there's no way I could say no, and made the decision to do the deal. It's pretty much in pristine condition. I really couldn't ask for a nicer example of one of these rifles. I think we need to get a better look at it though to decide whether or not it was worth the $600 I paid for it. So let's move it over to the desk for a quick inspection. So here's my newest addition to the military surplus firearms collection, a Yugoslavian M5966 SKS, fully equipped with the original grenade launching hardware up front and folding bayonet. When I first began collecting, these rifles were about $200, so it really hurt spending $600 on this example, but this rifle I picked up today is in outstanding condition, probably unissued and possibly unfired. It still has the tag and zip tie from today's gun show. They had it labeled Yugo American Tactical Imports SKS 5966 7.62 by 39. Let's get this zip tie removed so we can actually check the action here. Use a little pair of snips for this so I don't damage anything with a knife. This wood is extremely clean, with no signs of cosmoline whatsoever, but it still retains that original roughly textured Yugoslavian wood, so it has not been sanded. It's very common for these Yugo SKSs to be completely slathered with cosmoline. Of course, that was done for long-term storage. It is of the utmost importance, though, that if you receive a Yugo SKS, or any SKS for that matter, that you completely disassemble these rifles and thoroughly clean them of cosmoline before taking them to the range, because if they are not properly cleaned, these rifles can experience very dangerous slam fires. As far as this one goes, it definitely appears someone has cleaned it at some point in the past, but they didn't do the most thorough job, because if we look in all the little nooks and crannies, all the corners, there is still caked on cosmoline pretty much everywhere on this rifle, and this rifle 100% smells like a tub of cosmoline. From what I've seen so far, it does look like this rifle is all matching serial numbers. Receiver, magazine, bolt, top cover, and stock are all matching. On our blade style bayonet here, we can see a little bit of old, crusted on cosmoline that is sort of dried. This example does have its folding night sights. This front sight folds up and has a big white dot. And at the rear here, we have our regular sight. We can actually fold up the bottom of this to reveal two white dots on that correspond with the one that we flipped up in the front, giving you a far more visible 3-dot sight for nighttime shooting. I am curious to see what our cosmoline situation is on the inside, so let's once more drop this bolt, and we'll remove this top cover. There's some electrode pencil on that, but it looks like a lot of the Cosmo is gone. There's our recoil spring. Now it is still coated pretty heavily with cosmoline and is sticky to the touch. Pull the bolt carrier to the back here. Little cosmoline on the back and a little on the front, but it does look like someone has cleaned this before. Now our bolt here is the part on these rifles that you have to make absolute certain that it is completely clean before you shoot. There is visible thickened cosmoline around the end of the firing pin, and the firing pin itself is not moving at all. It should rattle back and forth a little bit. There's an extremely high likelihood that if this rifle was fired in the condition that it is currently, that it would suffer from strings of runaway slam firing. It absolutely needs to be thoroughly cleaned before I shoot it. Now inside of the receiver here is not too bad, but we can see a little bit on the edges here. I'm sure the full gas system here probably still has all kinds of cosmoline in there that needs to get out. Before deciding whether or not I wanted to pick this one up, I took a really good look at the bore, and to me, the bore seems absolutely pristine. It might be unfired, who knows, but what I can say for sure is that it is basically perfect. Shiny, super sharp rifling, it looks outstanding. With Yugo SKSs, it is extremely important that you always inspect the bore before taking one home, because unlike Chinese SKSs and most Russian SKSs, these rifles do not have a chrome-lined bore, and basically all of the original ammunition for these rifles was corrosive, so it's not uncommon to run across a Yugo that's had rounds through it with a very ugly bore, something you want to make sure you know about before you shell out anything for it. This is not the first Yugo SKS in my collection. I actually picked up a Yugoslavian M5966 more than a decade ago from a pretty amazing Black Friday sale of 200 smackers. Usually if I have a specific firearm in my collection already, I have absolutely no motivation to go out and spend money to procure the same kind of gun once again, especially if those new ones are literally 3 times what I paid for the one I already have in inventory. But I could not say no to this example. It is just in too good of shape for me to turn it down for $600. Today, at the exact same gun show I found this rifle, there was another Yugoslavian SKS, not in as nice condition as this one, and it was marked for $9.99. I'm sure those of you out there that picked up your Yugo SKS for $100 20 years ago are laughing at me for spending $600 on one today. But the way I see things, the values for military surplus firearms are only going one way over time, and that's up. And I particularly believe that semi-automatic firearms are going to appreciate in value more over time than the majority of bolt-action rifles. So although $600 doesn't sound quite as good as the $200 I spent more than a decade ago, I do think this rifle is worth that, if not a little bit more, even today. And over the next decade or so, I could easily see a Yugo SKS in this kind of condition being worth more than $1,000. But I suppose that's a story that only time will be able to tell. And I do want to know what you guys think about it though. Did I completely overpay for this rifle? Was I scammed out of my $600 for a $400 or $300 rifle? Or do you think in the long run it'll be a good move picking this one up today? I also ran across some really interesting ammunition I've never seen before from Carolina Custom. There was a vendor that had a ton of this stuff, and apparently it is remanufactured. I picked up a box of 44 Magnum and 2 boxes of 357 Magnum, all at a pretty insane 15 per box. The brass has a mix of head stamps indicative of reloads, but these are fairly decent looking jacketed hollow points. The 44 Magnum looks to have all the same head stamps. The brass is a little bit patinaed, but these two have a really nice looking jacketed hollow point. I've never heard of this ammo brand, and it's always a risk shooting sketchy reloads, but the price on these was just too low for me to pass up, and I'm going to be shooting it through wheel guns anyway, so I'm not too worried about it destroying my gun just in case there's something a little bit wrong with them. If you guys do have any experience with this brand though, let me know about it down in the comments before I go and send some of this through my guns. The same guys that had the Carolina Custom also had a batch of surplus 9mm. Now they had this labeled as Egyptian 9mm and that it was very likely corrosive. I'm sure it probably is in this military style box. 32 rounds for $3. How could I say no? A script head stamp with black primer sealant, and those are full metal jackets. I picked this up more as a curiosity than I did shooter ammo, but who knows, I might try to put some of this through my Egyptian Hell Wand just to test out some sketchy Egyptian ammo in an Egyptian gun. I try to do these gun show videos about every quarter, and the last show we attended previous to this one was in September. Unfortunately, at that September show, I couldn't find anything worth bringing home. Prices were ridiculous, and the availability just simply wasn't that great. At today's show, I truly thought we were going to have a repeat. There were tons of things to look at, but nothing in the price range where I could justify actually making a move. I think this rifle is a testament that even in today's insane Milsurp market, if you do your due diligence, actually put boots on the ground and go out to the gun shows, go to gun stores and do some searching, you can still find pretty good deals on military surplus firearms in these trying times. Overall though, the current Milsurp market here in the United States is truly sad. There is almost nothing new available on the CNR market. There are virtually no new imports of anything interesting and cool coming in from around the world, and that alone can cause the prices of existing firearms in the hands of collectors to go way up. Simple supply and demand. We do have a new political regime coming into office though, so perhaps there's a little light at the end of this very long tunnel we've been going down. I wouldn't get my hopes up too much though, because the world we live in is just far different than it was 10 or even 20 years ago, and I don't see large amounts of new surplus coming into the country anytime soon. I can't wait to get this one cleaned up and get it out to the range to send some lead. I'm very excited to see how it groups with how awesome the bore looks. Perhaps I'll have to bring you guys along for the ride and make that into a future video. Sure, the Milsurp market is most certainly in some stage of being dead or dying, but the collector's market isn't going anywhere anytime soon, so we're going to keep this channel going as long as we can. If you enjoyed this one, don't forget to hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of my future videos, and let me know what gun shows and the Milsurp market are looking like where you're from. Happy Milsurp hunting, Happy New Year. Thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next video. See you then. Peace.